Dear Lord, thank you for the power of second chances and the quiet strength found in unexpected places. May every listener find hope, healing, and purpose in today's tale. Amen. Welcome to Mr. Favor Tales, where hearts heal and stories speak louder than words. Here, we tell the kind of stories that cradle your soul, stir your spirit, and leave you thinking long after the screen fades. If you're ready for a journey of loyalty, love, and legacy, you're in the right place. Don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe. It helps us bring more meaningful stories your way. She was just the nanny until she inherited his fortune, his child, and his enemies. It was supposed to be a quiet funeral, private, respectful, but when a billionaire dies, nothing stays quiet for long. The golden leaves of October twisted through the wrought iron gates of the old Trinity Church in Manhattan. Cameramen camped at a respectful distance. Black cars lined the street like chess pieces before battle. But inside, the mood was not of war. It was of sorrow. At the front pew, wearing a modest black coat with her hair pinned in a way that reminded one of simplicity rather than wealth, sat Mariana Lopez. She wasn't crying. She couldn't, because beside her, gripping her hand with small, pale fingers, was Oliver Sinclair, Nathaniel Sinclair's 8-year-old son. The boy had cried himself to sleep in her arms the night before. This morning, his eyes were dry, but his grip said everything. "I'm right here," Mariana whispered, her voice shaking as the minister spoke of Nate's legacy: tech mogul, biotech pioneer, father, friend. To everyone else in the room, Mariana was the nanny. To Oliver, she was the only constant left. And to Nate, well, only time would reveal what Mariana truly meant to him. Mariana hadn't always lived in Manhattan. She was born in Elizabeth, New Jersey, in a 2-bedroom apartment above a laundromat. Her father worked night shifts at a shipping warehouse before walking out when she was 9. Her mother passed from cancer when Mariana was 20, and college went with her. She'd always been brilliant. She could break down calculus problems in high school without blinking. Teachers said she'd make a great doctor or lawyer. But life didn't care about SAT scores. Her mother needed care. Her siblings needed food, and scholarships didn't pay rent. So when a recruiter called about a live-in nanny job in the city, for a widowed tech billionaire with a 4-year-old, she said yes. That was 6 years ago. Back then, Nate was just Mr. Sinclair, tall, exhausted, and mourning. He didn't speak much. He barely looked people in the eye. But from the moment Oliver climbed into Mariana's lap and asked if she knew how to make grilled cheese the way Mommy used to, she knew she wasn't going anywhere. She wasn't just a nanny. She was their piece. Nate wasn't like the billionaires on TV. He didn't care for tuxedos or limelight. He wore wrinkled hoodies and glasses that slid off his nose. His mind lived inside DNA code and AI simulations. But Mariana saw the man under the weight. Some nights, after Oliver fell asleep, she'd find Nate still awake. In the kitchen, heating soup or thumbing through old photo albums. They'd talk about grief, about guilt, about parenting. Once, she asked, "Why don't you date again?" He answered, "Because the only person who understands Oliver already lives here." That night, Mariana lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering what he meant. But she never asked. They never crossed that line. Not then. The funeral ended. Murmurs began. The press surged forward, only to be held back by Nate's security team. Mariana guided Oliver into the sleek black car, clutching her small handbag like it was a shield. She didn't expect what came next. That afternoon, at a law firm with marble walls and windows that overlooked the entire city, Mariana sat across from Miles Reynolds, Sinclair Biotech's CFO, and a silver-haired lawyer who looked like he belonged on a TV drama. They handed her a thick envelope and a sentence that shattered everything. "Nathaniel Sinclair named you the sole heir to his estate, Mariana, including full custody of Oliver and control of Sinclair Biotech." Miles's jaw tightened. Mariana blinked. "I think there's been a mistake," she said. "There's no mistake," the lawyer replied, voice solemn. "He updated the will 4 months ago." She turned to Miles. "Did you know?" Miles shook his head slowly. "He mentioned trust, but not this." Oliver leaned against her shoulder. "Does that mean we live together forever?" Mariana's lips parted. Her voice barely made it out. "Yes, it means forever." By nightfall, the news had leaked. By morning, the headline screamed, Nanny inherits billionaire's fortune. Boardroom in chaos. The Nanny and the Empire. How one woman changed everything. Regina Hunt, Nate's sharp-tongued in-house legal counsel, showed up with two things, a forced smile and a set of documents. This is your transition contract, Mariana, she said, placing the papers on a gleaming glass desk. It outlines the conditions of succession, guardianship, financial power, company stake, but you have 30 days to accept or decline. I thought I didn't have a choice, Mariana murmured. You always have a choice, Regina replied, especially when the world is watching. The contract might as well have been written in Greek, but Mariana scanned it, eyes narrowing at words like merger clause, hostile takeover, and executive authority. She could feel Nate whispering in her memory. You can do this. Sinclair Biotech sat in a mirrored tower off Park Avenue, a temple of glass and code. Mariana entered the building as strangers stared. Was she the imposter? The Cinderella without the gown? Miles met her in the lobby. His expression was guarded, but there was something in his eyes, not doubt. Curiosity. I told him not to keep secrets, he said. But Nate never listened. They walked into the executive suite. A portrait of Nate stared from behind the desk. Confident, distant, brilliant. Why me? Mariana whispered. Miles looked at her. Because he trusted you. That's something even money can't buy. Elsewhere in the city, Victor Chen watched the news in silence. CEO of a rival firm, Victor had always envied Nate's innovations and his stubborn refusal to sell out. Now that Nate was dead, Victor saw opportunity. He dialed his assistant. Pull every clause from Sinclair's patents. Find out what leverage we have, and dig into the Nanny. He smiled coldly. She won't last 30 days. If this story is already tugging at your heart, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Your support helps us keep sharing stories that matter. The Sinclair family mansion sat like a castle above the cliffs of Long Island, all white stone and glass, watching over the Atlantic like it owned the ocean. Mariana stood at the threshold with Oliver, her small hand holding his. As their luggage was carried inside by staff, she didn't recognize. I don't belong here, she murmured under her breath. You do now, Miles said behind her. He'd driven them up after a tense morning at the office. Oliver tugged her arm. Can I show you my old treehouse? She smiled weakly. Lead the way, kiddo. As they walked through hallways echoing with quiet, Mariana felt the pull of memories. Oliver's laughter from years past, Nate's deep voice echoing in the kitchen, the way the air smelled like coffee and pine wood at Christmas. All of it, now hers. While the mansion felt unfamiliar, the boardroom was worse. 16 executives sat at the table. Most were older men in crisp suits. Regina Hunt sat at the far end, her pen tapping steadily against a notepad. Mariana entered the room alone. No Nate, no buffer. A murmur ran through the room. That's the Nanny? She's not qualified. This is a publicity disaster. Mariana cleared her throat. I understand your concerns. I wouldn't expect anyone here to trust me overnight. Her voice trembled, but her eyes didn't flinch. I'm not here to replace Nate. No one can. But I was by his side when he built this company. I watched the process. I listened when he spoke about his vision. And I care about Sinclair Biotech, because he cared. Regina interjected. With respect, Mariana, caring doesn't qualify you to run a billion-dollar company. Miles leaned forward. But understanding people, and intention, sometimes does. Nate trusted her. That matters. In the days that followed, Mariana dove into work. Not because she wanted to impress, but because she had no choice. She rose at 5 a.m., got Oliver ready for school, then rode the company car into the city. There, she studied, absorbed, watched Miles like a student with a master. And slowly she began to see patterns others missed. On a quiet Thursday, she found something strange in the quarterly report, a discrepancy in Sinclair's patent submissions. A file time-stamped weeks before Nate's death showed a signature he never used. She brought it to Miles. This signature, she said, it's forged. He frowned. You sure? I signed his legal mail for years. That's not his handwriting. Miles nodded gravely. I'll look into it. Later that day, Miles discovered the patent had been leaked to none other than Victor Chen's firm. The war had begun. Mariana was no stranger to fear. She'd grown up learning how to walk home fast in bad neighborhoods. But this was different. This was money fear. Power fear. One night, as she left the office, her driver mentioned a car had been following them. The next morning, Oliver's new private school called. Someone had requested his schedule under a false name. Security was tightened, but so was her resolve. She walked into Miles's office the next evening. "I'm staying," she said. "I'm not stepping down." He looked up from his paperwork. "I didn't think you would." Oliver had nightmares now. Dreams where he couldn't find his dad, or he was being taken away from Mariana by men in suits. She sat on the floor beside his bed, rubbing his back. "You're safe," she whispered. "Will they take me from you?" He asked, eyes wide. "No," she promised. "Never." In that moment, Mariana realized something deeper than grief. She wasn't just guarding Nate's legacy. She was building her own. The next twist came in the form of a man from her past. Ethan James, her college ex-fiancé, now a researcher in Boston. She hadn't seen him in 10 years. He arrived unannounced, carrying flowers and awkward hope. "I saw the news," he said, "and I thought maybe you could use a friend who remembers you before all this." She laughed. "I barely remember myself before all this." They had coffee in the sunroom overlooking the ocean. He asked about Oliver, about Nate, about the girl who once dreamed of med school. "I never forgot you," he said gently. Mariana smiled. "Funny thing is, I forgot to dream." Ethan reached for her hand, but she hesitated, because someone else had already been standing in that space, quietly, steadily. Miles, Victor Chen struck hard. A letter from his lawyers arrived, challenging the will's legality. They claimed Nate was not of sound mind when he signed it. Regina, while not officially supporting the challenge, didn't exactly stop it either. Board members grew uneasy. The stock dipped. Shareholders demanded answers. Mariana stood on the ledge of a cliff, figuratively and emotionally. Then came a corporate gala, the first one she'd attend alone, in Nate's name. She wore a sleek black gown borrowed from the estate's closet. Miles gave her a final nod before she stepped into the ballroom. "You'll be fine," he said. "They'll underestimate you. That's your edge. Lights, laughter, lies." That was the gala, in a sentence. She shook hands, smiled, listened. When Victor approached, champagne in hand, the moment turned electric. "Miss Lopez," he purred, "you wear power well." She stared at him. "That's funny. I thought you wore desperation." He chuckled. "Let me be blunt. Sell the company. Walk away rich. Otherwise you'll lose more than just stock prices." Her fingers curled around her clutch. "Is that a threat?" "A prediction," Victor whispered. But Mariana smiled. "Then let me give you mine. I'm not afraid of men who underestimate women." She walked away, heart pounding, but victorious. That night, Miles waited for her on the balcony of the mansion. "You were brilliant tonight," he said. "I was shaking. No one saw it but me." She turned toward him, exhausted but strangely alive. "I don't know how to be this woman," she admitted. "CEO, guardian, fighter." "You already are," he replied, voice low. Silence stretched. The waves crashed below. Then, slowly, he reached for her hand. Not forcefully, not with expectation, just presence. She didn't pull away. In corporate America, enemies rarely wear villain masks. They wear suits, and they smile. Victor Chen had been around long enough to know how to play the long game. He didn't shout or threaten, he whispered. Planted stories, twisted facts, and now, thanks to a carefully orchestrated media leak, rumors were swirling. Was Nathaniel Sinclair manipulated in his final months? Sources say Nanny turned heiress may have influenced billionaire's mental state. Board conflict brewing at Sinclair Biotech. Is the company safe under Mariana Lopez? Mariana stood in her office, reading the articles. Her hands trembled. "Am I in over my head, Miles?" He looked up from his laptop. "You're in deep, but you're not drowning. Not yet." She laughed bitterly. "Not the most comforting answer. Truth rarely is," he said. "But you're stronger than you think." He walked over and handed her a folder. Inside were outlines of legal strategies, public relations damage control, and a list of board allies. "I've been preparing for this," Because I knew Nate's choice would shake the world, but I didn't expect to care this much about who he left it to. Their eyes met. A moment, a breath, a question unspoken, but then a knock on the door. Regina. Regina Hunt didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. Her words were scalpel-sharp and equally dangerous. We've received a formal inquiry from the probate court. Victor's team is arguing the will was signed under duress. Mariana stared. Are they saying I forced Nate? Regina shrugged. They're saying what they need to say to cause doubt. I was with Nate every day, Mariana snapped. I took care of him, of Oliver. I believe you, Regina interrupted softly. But courts don't deal in belief. They deal in proof. She handed over a sealed envelope. You have 14 days to prepare a legal rebuttal. And then, almost like an afterthought, you might want to find an attorney who knows your kind of story. Mariana didn't ask what she meant by your kind. She already knew. That night, she wandered through the mansion, alone, past Nate's old study, past Oliver's new nursery. She stopped at the piano room. He used to sit there, late at night, playing softly. Sometimes, Mariana would hum along from the kitchen. Never words, just melodies. She sat down and opened the lid. Her fingers trembled over the keys. Then, she saw it. A drawer, slightly ajar. Inside, Nate's journal. She didn't want to invade, but something made her look. Inside were pages of sketches, formulas, and letters. To her. I don't know how to say this aloud, Mariana, but I see you, and I thank God for you, every single day. If anything happens to me, I want you to know, I chose you for a reason, not because I pitied you, but because I trust you to protect everything I love. She wept. For him. For Oliver. For herself. For the life that might have been. Ethan returned the next day. I want to help, he said. I'm not sure you can, she replied. I know law. I know medicine. I can help you build the case. Nate wasn't under duress. His mind was sharp. Miles didn't love the idea, but he didn't protest. The three of them formed an unlikely triangle, the ex, the confidant, and the widow, not widow. Together, they started building a defense. They pulled video clips of Nate giving a keynote 2 months before his death. His speech articulate, clear, brilliant. They gathered voice memos, emails, schedules. The evidence was growing. Amidst all this, Oliver's world spun on. He struggled at his new school, bullied by kids who'd seen the headlines. Your new mom's a gold digger, one of them said. Oliver punched him in the mouth. Mariana was called in. She apologized, scolded, and comforted. But that night, when Oliver clung to her and cried, she realized something. They were both fighting to belong. Victor wasn't done. He sent a man to pose as a delivery worker, but he carried a USB drive with files stolen from Sinclair's servers. Files that were meant to frame Mariana for insider trading. Miles intercepted it. This is getting dangerous, he warned. I'm not backing down, she said. Then we tightened security. He leaned in, whispering, and we tighten our circle. One evening, when the chaos momentarily slowed, Mariana invited Miles for dinner. Not strategy, not contracts, just dinner. They sat on the mansion patio, candles flickering in the ocean breeze. He talked about his childhood, how he'd grown up poor in Connecticut and worked his way through school. She talked about her mother, how she used to sing while cooking. I used to think I'd be a doctor, Mariana said. You still could be. Too late. No, he said, his voice low. For someone like you, it's never too late. A pause. And then, slowly, carefully, Miles reached across the table. Their fingers met, and this time, she didn't pull away. The danger became real that same night. Around 2 a.m., the alarm blared. Security cameras caught movement in the West Wing. Mariana rushed to Oliver's room, found him safe. But downstairs, 2 masked men had broken in. One of them had Nate's old laptop in a bag. Mariana confronted them, unarmed but unafraid. What do you want? The taller one pulled off his mask. It was someone she recognized, one of Nate's former lab technicians fired for misconduct months ago. You don't belong here, he hissed. This was supposed to be mine, not yours. Before he could lunge, Guards tackled him. But the damage was done. The illusion of safety was shattered. The next morning, the media exploded. Attempted break-in at Sinclair Mansion. Inheritance battle escalates, but instead of panic, Mariana held a press conference. She stood before cameras, hair pulled back, wearing a simple blouse. "I didn't ask for this life," she said, "but I will honor it. I loved Nate Sinclair as a human being. I love his son as my own, and I will not be bullied into silence." The world watched and believed her. Mariana stared at her reflection in the mansion's grand mirror. It didn't feel like her. The woman wore a silk blouse, designer heels, and a polished expression that screamed power. But underneath, she still felt like the girl who used to warm soup on a gas stove for her little brother and pray the lights wouldn't go out. She touched the gold locket around her neck, her mother's, and whispered, "You wouldn't believe this, Mama." In the hallway, Oliver's footsteps echoed. He peeked in. "You look like a queen." She smiled. "Only if you'll be my knight." The board had reconvened. This time, for a vote. A formal inquiry into Mariana's leadership had been launched, triggered by the smear campaign. Some members wanted a more traditional CEO. Code for, not the nanny. Regina stood first. Mariana Lopez has managed the transition under extreme public pressure. She stabilized investor confidence and salvaged a damaged patent. But I question her readiness. A few nods, some furrowed brows. Miles stood next. "You all know me. I've been with this company since day one, and I've never seen anyone handle this level of chaos with the kind of calm, clarity, and commitment that she has." He looked at Mariana across the room. "She may not have a Harvard degree, but she has something you can't teach. Vision. The same vision Nate had." Then, the vote. Mariana stepped out. 30 minutes passed like molasses. Then the door opened. Miles smiled. "She stays." With Ethan's help, Mariana submitted a formal rebuttal to Victor's court challenge. She included Nate's letters, audio clips, medical records, and even a psychological evaluation dated just 1 week before his death. Proof of a sound, rational mind. Victor didn't expect the resistance to be this organized. He panicked. And in his panic, he made a mistake. One of his internal emails, mocking Nate's mental state and plotting to poach Sinclair's vaccine technology, leaked. Public trust flipped. Mariana, the underdog, became the rightful heir in the public eye. Mariana took a break one weekend, just 2 days, and drove back to Elizabeth, New Jersey. She visited her mother's old grave, sat beside it, and talked. "I'm not sure how I got here," she said, "but I know I don't want to forget where I came from." Later, she visited her younger sister, Anna, now a nurse. They hadn't spoken in months. Anna opened the door, stunned. "Is that you? Or a ghost with a chauffeur?" They laughed, hugged, talked late into the night. Mariana confessed, "I feel like I'm living 2 lives. The woman with the house and title, and the girl who still counts every dollar in her head." Anna said something she never forgot. "You're both, and that's why you'll never lose yourself." A month later, Oliver was invited to speak at the Sinclair Biotech Foundation's Children's Gala. He wore a little suit and looked like Nate's twin. On stage, he held the mic nervously, then glanced at Mariana. She smiled. He spoke. "My daddy was a builder. He built cool things with computers and science. But the best thing he ever built was our family. He found me a second mom, someone who reads me stories and makes me feel safe." He looked at her. "I love you, Mariana. Thank you for not leaving." The crowd stood. There wasn't a dry eye in the room. The Department of Justice opened a formal investigation into Victor Chen's company for intellectual property theft and corporate espionage. His stock plummeted. He resigned in disgrace, citing health reasons. Miles sent Mariana a single text. Weeks later, on a quiet Sunday morning, Miles asked Mariana to join him in Nate's old lab. She hesitated. The place held too many memories. But when she arrived, he'd set up a whiteboard. A fresh business strategy. "We've been thinking too small," he said. "Sinclair Biotech doesn't have to just survive. It can lead the next generation of health technology." He showed her a blueprint, software to integrate genetic testing with predictive medicine. Mariana blinked. "This is brilliant." He grinned. "Thought you'd say that." She walked closer, heart racing. And you want me to lead this with you? I want more than that. He paused. I want to build it with you, as partners, in every sense. She didn't answer with words. She leaned in and kissed him. Later that fall, Mariana enrolled in night classes, not to prove anything, but because it was hers. At a university near the city, she sat beside 20-somethings who had no idea she ran a billion-dollar company by day. She took notes like a freshman. She smiled like someone who found a dream they thought they'd buried. Christmas came. The mansion, once cold and echoing, now pulsed with warmth. Oliver hung ornaments with Miles, laughing. Anna and her kids visited. The house was full of life. Mariana, in a cozy sweater, watched it all from the staircase. Once a nanny, now a mother, a CEO, a partner, a force. She held a cup of cocoa, then whispered to herself, "This is home." Mariana speaking at a biotech conference, calm, brilliant, leading. Oliver drawing a family portrait in school. It shows Mariana, Miles, and himself. Miles and Mariana walking hand in hand on the beach, wind tugging their hair. A flashback of Nate smiling, watching them from a memory. Then finally, a wide shot of the Sinclair mansion under a golden sunset. From the nanny's room to the throne. If Mariana's story touched your heart, if you believe in second chances, chosen families, and the power of quiet brilliance, please like, comment, and subscribe. At Mr. Favortales, every story is a mirror. And maybe, just maybe, this one reflects a part of you. Months had passed since Mariana first stepped into Nate's world as more than the nanny. Now she stood on the rooftop of Sinclair Biotech's new research wing, a project she helped fund, design, and launch. The city stretched out beneath her, glittering, infinite. Next to her stood Oliver, holding her hand. "Is this what Dad wanted?" he asked. Mariana looked at the skyline. At the logo gleaming on the building behind them, Sinclair Next Gen Research Center. "No," she said quietly. "He wanted even more." Sinclair Biotech surges under new CEO Mariana Lopez from nanny to nation's most inspiring executive. Business Insider names Mariana Lopez Woman of the Year. The headlines changed, but Mariana didn't. She still cooked Oliver's breakfast every Sunday. She still took night classes. And once a month, she still drove back to New Jersey with a box of groceries for families she used to know. Because fame didn't impress her. What impressed her was staying grounded. At the next annual shareholders meeting, Mariana presented her boldest strategy yet, a merger with a small tech firm working on early detection tools for rare genetic diseases. She stood at the podium in a navy blazer, her voice calm, her facts precise. When questions came, even hostile ones, she answered with grace. Regina raised an eyebrow from her seat but didn't interrupt. And when the vote was called, unanimous approval. Even Regina smiled. A real one this time. Later, in private, Regina approached her. "You've surprised me," she said. "I know," Mariana replied. "I surprised myself." Their relationship had bloomed not like a wildfire, but like a steady ember that never went out. At work, they challenged each other, debated, laughed. At home, they found rhythm in the ordinary. He made coffee. She walked Oliver to school. They cooked pasta late at night after long board meetings. One evening, as the three of them played a game of cards by the fireplace, Oliver looked up and said, "Can we be a family forever?" Mariana's eyes welled. Miles answered first. "We already are, buddy." Ethan called. He was moving to California. Offered a final goodbye. They met for coffee. No tension. No regrets. "I'm happy for you," he said. "Me too," she replied. As he left, he turned back. "If I ever get married, I want my wife to be like you." She laughed. "Then you'd better find someone who's half steel, half soup." One Saturday, a woman showed up at the mansion gate. She was in her 50s, wore a cardigan, and held an old photo in hand. "I'm Lily Sinclair's cousin," she said. Mariana was stunned. The woman wasn't there for money. She came with a box of Lily's journals and a simple message. She was broken at the end, but she wanted Oliver to have this when he was older. Mariana accepted the box with quiet grace. Later that night she read through a few pages, stories of love, sorrow, and attempts to mother a child who never truly knew her. She placed the box in Oliver's closet with a note. For when you're ready to know all sides of love. Mariana was invited to speak at the National Future of Biotech Convention in San Francisco. She walked onto stage with calm poise, introduced not by her title but by her impact. The host said, "She took grief and turned it into growth. She turned inheritance into innovation. Please welcome Mariana Lopez." She spoke about ethics in biotech, the importance of protecting legacies, and how the heart must guide the head in science. The audience stood, not just for her intelligence, but for her humanity. Despite the awards, Mariana kept one thing sacred: family. Every Friday was no tech night. They played board games, danced in the kitchen, watched old cartoons. On Oliver's 9th birthday, she surprised him with a homemade cake. Not the mansion chef's version, but her own, slightly lopsided and full of love. He hugged her so tight she nearly cried. "This is the best birthday ever," he whispered. A new issue arose. A whistleblower inside Sinclair Biotech alerted Mariana to a research branch using experimental data unethically, a project Nate once paused due to safety risks. Mariana didn't hesitate. She suspended the program, fired the director, released a public statement. The media called it bold. Regina called it dangerous. But Miles said only one thing: it was right. That night, they held hands in silence, both knowing they were protecting more than a company. They were protecting a legacy. One evening, on the mansion's cliffside balcony, with the sky painted in lavender and gold, Miles pulled a small velvet box from his pocket. "I didn't think I'd ever love again," he said. "But then you walked into my life and changed everything." He opened the box. A simple ring, elegant, timeless, like her. "I'm not asking because we need labels. I'm asking because I want to walk the rest of this with you, as partners, forever." Mariana didn't answer. She just cried, and nodded, and kissed him like she'd never let go. If this story continues to move your heart, don't stop now. Like, comment your favorite moment so far, and hit subscribe to follow the powerful journey of Mariana Lopez, from humble roots to the heights of legacy. Mariana never dreamed of a grand wedding. She once imagined it would be something small, in a backyard garden, maybe with a few friends and family, and lots of laughter, not a ballroom filled with power brokers, journalists, and billionaire names whispered across the nation. But this was different. This was her life now, and she was learning to make it hers, not just survive inside it. Before planning the wedding, Mariana made a quiet trip back to her old neighborhood. She didn't wear designer clothes that day. No chauffeur, no makeup artist, just jeans, sneakers, and her own keys in her own car. She stopped by the corner bakery, where she used to work weekends in high school. The owners, Mr. and Mrs. Gilberto, had aged, but their smiles hadn't. "You look just like your mother," Mrs. Gilberto said, hugging her. Mariana smiled. "She would have wanted you both at the wedding." They cried, and they came. Mariana and Miles were married under the open sky, on the very cliffs overlooking the Atlantic, the same view she once feared. Now, it felt like home. Oliver was their ring bearer. Her sister, Anna, walked her down the aisle. Instead of a priest, a close friend, one of Nate's old mentors, led the ceremony, telling stories of love built not on grand gestures, but small, consistent acts of loyalty and sacrifice. Vows were exchanged, not long, not dramatic, just real. And when they kissed, the entire crowd stood, not for two business moguls, but for two souls who chose love despite the odds. That night, in a quiet corner of the mansion garden, Mariana and Miles sat alone. No cameras, no crowd, just them. "You know," Miles whispered, "I never thought I'd end up here." She laughed softly. "Me neither. You think Nate would approve?" Mariana looked up at the stars. "I think he already does." Weeks passed. Mariana returned to work with renewed energy. She had built a rhythm now, days filled with strategy meetings and research approvals. Nights filled with Oliver's homework and long talks with Miles about the future. Then came the news. She was pregnant. She stared at the test strip in the bathroom for 5 minutes without moving. Tears streamed down her face. A child of her own, in a world she never thought she'd be part of. She told Miles over dinner. He stood in stunned silence, then kissed her forehead. "We're doing this," he whispered. "All of it." They waited a few weeks to tell Oliver. They didn't want him to feel replaced or worried, but when they finally sat him down, Mariana took his hand and said, "We're going to have a baby." His eyes widened. "Does that mean I'm not your only kid anymore?" Mariana smiled and pulled him into a hug. "You will always be my first heart. This baby is part of you too." He thought for a second, then asked, "Can I help name them?" Miles laughed. "That's non-negotiable." Just as life began to settle into peace, an unexpected letter arrived. From prison. Victor Chen. It was addressed to Mariana. She opened it cautiously. The letter wasn't angry. It wasn't threatening. It was apologetic. He wrote about greed, about envy, about how he never saw her as a threat, and that was his biggest mistake. "I fought you because I feared you were unworthy. But the truth is, I feared you were better than all of us. Because you didn't fight for power. You fought for people. It wasn't forgiveness. But it was closure." Mariana launched a mentorship initiative within Sinclair Biotech, the Lopez Fellowship, aimed at supporting young women from underprivileged backgrounds pursuing careers in science and medicine. She gave the first speech at the launch. "I wasn't supposed to be here," she said. "I didn't have the right pedigree, or the right name. But someone saw something in me that the world didn't." The audience, filled with students, single mothers, and first-generation immigrants, erupted in applause. The fellowship received a $10 million endowment and a new slogan, "Brilliance comes from everywhere." One night, Mariana found a letter tucked beneath her pillow. It was from Oliver. Handwritten. "Dear Mom, I know you're not the mom I was born with, but you're the one who stayed. You're the one who made pancakes when I was sad and sang when I was scared. You make the big house feel small and warm. I hope the baby is like you. Love, Oliver." She held the letter to her chest and wept quietly. She didn't need validation from the world. This was enough. In a final twist of irony, Mariana offered Regina a promotion. "You're tough," Mariana said, "and honest. Even when it was hard." Regina blinked. "Why me?" "Because you never went easy on me. And now I need someone who challenges me, not flatters me." Regina accepted the role of chief legal advisor to the board. A woman who once doubted Mariana, now defended her legacy. At a small private garden picnic with close friends and family, Miles popped a balloon over Mariana's head. Pink confetti rained down. Oliver jumped in place. "I knew it. I said it was a girl." Mariana laughed through tears. "She's going to need a big brother like you." If you're inspired by how love, loyalty, and legacy can build a whole new world, let us know in the comments. Like, share, and hit subscribe for the final chapters of Mariana's unforgettable story. Mariana stood in the baby's nursery, freshly painted in soft cream and rose. A mobile spun slowly above the crib, golden stars and paper cranes, handmade by Oliver and Miles over 2 weekends. Her hand rested on her growing belly. She was building something new, but she wasn't just raising a child, she was raising a future. One grounded in grace, purpose, and power, used right. Sinclair Biotech wasn't the same company anymore. Under Mariana's leadership, it had evolved from a competitive fortress to a collaborative powerhouse. She had quietly reshaped the executive team, bringing in women, people of color, and scientists who cared as much about ethics as results. One executive, Dr. Helena Choi, formerly of MIT, called Mariana the soul of the new Sinclair. At the annual company retreat, Miles addressed the staff. "When Nate built this company, he built it with fire. Mariana rebuilt it with heart, and both, together, make something that can't be destroyed." Despite the accolades, the press wasn't always kind. A prominent business magazine ran a cover story, "The Billion-Dollar Nanny, Mariana Lopez, and the Burden of Playing CEO." Inside, the tone was subtly patronizing, praising her emotional intelligence but questioning her long-term leadership strategy. Mariana didn't respond directly. Instead, she invited the journalist to a day-in-the-life visit. They shadowed her from 6 a.m. till 10 p.m., from packing Oliver's lunch to leading a crisis meeting about a contaminated drug batch to teaching a night class at a local college. The follow-up article? "We were wrong about Mariana Lopez. She's not playing CEO. She's redefining it." Mariana didn't want to deliver the baby in a penthouse suite or private foreign hospital. She chose a respected local hospital in Manhattan, the same one where Miles was born. When the OB/GYN asked about her birth plan, she smiled and said, "Simple, safe, family around." Miles supported her decision completely. Oliver insisted on making a playlist for the delivery room. It included everything from lullabies to Beethoven's Fifth to a remixed version of Twinkle Twinkle with trap beats. "Baby needs to come into the world knowing style," he declared. Right as Mariana's due date approached, a surprise lawsuit arrived from a distant Sinclair cousin, claiming a portion of the estate, citing an obscure clause in a 10-year-old business merger. Regina dove into the paperwork like a hawk. "This is garbage," she snapped. "But it's timed to stress you." Mariana nodded. "Then we don't play defense." She authorized the legal team to file a countersuit for defamation and damages. Within 72 hours, the cousin dropped the claim and publicly apologized. Mariana didn't just defend her name. She protected her daughter's birthright. While preparing files for the baby's inheritance documents, Miles stumbled across an old video file buried deep in Nate's private digital archives. He hesitated, then brought it to Mariana. Together, they sat in the study and played it. Nate appeared on screen, thinner, pale, but alert. "If you're watching this, it means I didn't get to say goodbye. But I want whoever sees this to know, I chose Mariana, not because she was convenient, not because I was lonely, but because she was the smartest, kindest, most fiercely capable woman I'd ever known. She didn't take this legacy. She earned it. Every hour she spent raising my son, managing my chaos, and believing in me when I couldn't believe in myself. If anyone questions her, tell them to look at my son, then look at the empire. Both are thriving. That's proof enough." They sat in silence after it ended. Then Mariana whispered, "Thank you, Nate." It happened on a rainy Tuesday afternoon. The contractions began while Mariana was on a Zoom call with the CDC about vaccine distribution in rural areas. She excused herself mid-sentence, calmly walked to Miles's office, and said, "It's time." He dropped everything. Hours later, after a smooth but intense labor, she gave birth to a baby girl, Camila Grace Lopez Sinclair. 7 pounds. Lungs like a trumpet. Mariana cried. Miles cried. Even Oliver cried when he held his baby sister for the first time. "She's perfect," he said. And loud. Like me, they brought Camila home wrapped in a knitted blanket from Mariana's mother's old hope chest. The family gathered around the fireplace for her first night. Instead of champagne, they toasted with warm milk and chocolate cookies, Oliver's idea. They agreed that every year on her birthday, they do something ordinary and meaningful. No lavish parties, just family time. Because power wasn't in display, it was in presence. 1 week after Camila's birth, Mariana sat in her study and wrote a letter. "Dear Camila, you were born into a world that already had its stories written. But I want you to know, you don't have to follow anyone's script, not mine, not your father's, not even the one the world wants to hand you. You are light, you are legacy, you are loved. And if you ever wonder what your mother stood for, it was never the money, or the mansion, or the headlines. It was for people, especially you." She folded it gently, sealed it, and placed it in a box marked, "For when she turns 18. Every chapter in Mariana's story reveals a new layer of purpose and heart. Like, share, and subscribe if you believe that legacy isn't just about what we build, it's about who we build it for. Spring in Manhattan had always felt like rebirth. The gray was gone. Trees bloomed across Central Park. Life moved with just a little more hope in each step. And in a private ceremony beneath the trees of the Sinclair Biotech Foundation garden, Mariana unveiled a bronze statue, not of herself, not of Nate, but of a family, a father, a child, and a woman holding both hands. The inscription read, "To those who lead with love, even when the world tells them they can't." People wept. Because it wasn't just a statue, it was a story. One day, while reviewing company security protocols, Mariana was notified of a visitor requesting access, an older man in a worn suit, carrying a leather briefcase. His name, Elias Monroe, Nate's estranged half-brother. The same one everyone assumed would inherit something, anything, before Mariana did. He'd never reached out. Until now. Mariana allowed him in, cautiously. He didn't ask for money. He didn't demand recognition. He simply said, "I wasn't ready to meet you until I let go of my bitterness." Mariana blinked. "That's rare honesty." He nodded. "I just wanted to meet the woman my brother chose." They spoke for an hour. At the end, Elias handed her a small photo of Nate as a child. He always had that look in his eyes, like he saw the world differently. Mariana replied, "He gave me the chance to see it too." At 11 months old, Camila took her first steps toward Oliver. He'd been dangling a toy keychain, jingling it like bait. She waddled toward him, wide-eyed, then collapsed into his arms. "I got her," Oliver shouted. "I was her first." Mariana smiled from the kitchen doorway. No business win could compare. Sinclair Biotech's new subsidiary, NextGen Gene, was ready for its IPO. Under Mariana and Miles's leadership, it had developed a new platform allowing rural clinics across the U.S. to access predictive gene testing at reduced costs. It was revolutionary and humane. Wall Street buzzed, but Mariana wasn't focused on profit. She mandated that 40% of the new stock proceeds would go into grants for underfunded health research and clinics in low-income areas. At the press conference, a reporter asked, "Why give away nearly half of the profit?" Mariana answered, "Because if science only serves the wealthy, then it's not innovation, it's elitism. We do this because we can, and because we should." That quote went viral. At age 10, Oliver wrote a short story for a school contest. Title, "My Mom Is Not Like the Others." In it, he described Mariana as half superhero, half scientist, and all heart. He won first place. He stood on stage, reading it to a crowd of teachers and parents. Mariana cried from the second row. Miles squeezed her hand. A teacher told her afterward, "He's got your brilliance." She smiled. And Nate's vision. One morning, Miles collapsed in the kitchen. Exhaustion, dehydration, stress, all rolled into one terrifying moment. He recovered quickly, but it was a wake-up call. Mariana stood beside his hospital bed, holding his hand tightly. "You don't get to leave me like this," she whispered. "I wasn't planning to," he croaked. She smiled, tearful. They made a vow then, 1 weekend a month, no business, no phones, just them, and they kept it, even after Sinclair Biotech's valuation crossed $10 billion. A formal invitation arrived. The president had been following Mariana's story. He wanted to award her with the Presidential Medal of Impact for her work in biotech accessibility. She was stunned. "I didn't do any of this for medals," she told Miles. "I know," he said. "That's why you deserve one." The award was televised. When she accepted it, she stood before the nation and said, "I started as a caregiver, not a CEO, and I still see myself that way. Because leadership, real leadership, is about care, for people, for purpose, for what we leave behind." On their wedding anniversary, Mariana surprised Miles. They stood in the study where he first asked her to build something together. She handed him a box. Inside was a deed to a small lakeside cabin in Vermont. "This is our new place," she said. "No boardrooms, no staff, just trees, books, and coffee." He was stunned. "You got us a hideaway?" "I got us peace." They kissed, slow, content. Because wealth meant nothing if you never got to rest. Oliver announced at dinner one night, "I think I want to be a pediatric geneticist." Miles nearly choked on his water. Mariana grinned. "You want to work in medicine?" Oliver shrugged. "I want to help kids, like Camila, like me." Mariana leaned in. "Then we'll help you get there." And she meant it. Because their family wasn't built on expectations, it was built on support. Years passed. Regina Hunt announced her retirement at a company gala. Mariana gave a speech in her honor. "She held me accountable, made me stronger, and never let me take shortcuts. In a world full of yes men, she was the woman who said, 'Prove it.' And I'm better because she did." Regina raised her glass. "I didn't think I'd respect the nanny. Now I can't imagine the board without her." Laughter filled the room. And admiration. The morning sun poured through the windows of the Sinclair mansion. Not the cold, silent place it once was, but a home now filled with the scent of pancakes, tiny footsteps, and soft jazz humming from the speakers. Mariana sat at the dining table in her robe, Camila nestled in one arm, and Oliver practicing multiplication at the end of the table. This was her empire. Not the buildings, not the biotech valuation. This, the Lopez Fellowship, had grown beyond expectation. What began as 10 young women became hundreds, from low-income neighborhoods in New Jersey to Native American reservations in Arizona. Mariana now hosted annual retreats for the fellows. They were flown to New York, given mentorship, and introduced to major names in medicine and tech. At one event, a 19-year-old stood up and said, "I used to clean offices, now I design them. Because of you, Mariana." That moment hit her harder than any award. It was full circle. By age 3, Camila had developed her own flair. She liked puzzles, plants, and asking questions about everything. She also refused to sleep without one of Mariana's old college textbooks in her crib. "I'm raising a scientist or a lawyer," Mariana joked to Miles. He smiled. "Or both. She's your daughter." One day, Camila asked, "Why don't you go to work in the big tall building every day like other mommies?" Mariana paused. "Because I already did, and now, I get to build from home." Camila nodded, then asked for a microscope. Years later, Mariana received an invitation to speak at the United Nations Global Women in Leadership Summit. She stood before delegates from 100 nations and spoke about equity in biotech, access to science education, and the importance of creating global mentorship pipelines. The Nigerian ambassador approached her afterward. "You have changed how we talk about legacy in boardrooms," she said. And just like that, Mariana's mission became international. She launched Lopez Global, a non-profit bridging young women with scientific institutions worldwide. At 16, Oliver interned at Sinclair Biotech, not by privilege but by process. He applied, was interviewed by HR, and placed in the Gen Ethics department, not under Miles or Mariana, but under a senior manager who didn't even know his last name at first. Oliver earned his reputation from the ground up. When a fellow intern tried to ride on his name, Oliver corrected them. "My mom didn't give me a shortcut. She gave me a standard." That line became etched into the intern lounge's bulletin board. When Oliver was 17, he was involved in a car accident. Nothing fatal, but enough to fracture a leg and leave him bedridden for weeks. Mariana dropped everything. She canceled meetings, postponed a keynote, because none of it mattered. For 3 weeks, she stayed by his side, reading aloud, organizing his meds, and playing board games like they used to when he was a child. On the final day before his discharge, he turned to her and said, "You know what I want to be more than a scientist?" "What?" she asked, brushing his curls. "Like you." As the years passed and Mariana's global impact expanded, Miles made a proposal of his own. "I think it's time I retire from Sinclair," he said. "Let someone younger take the reins." Mariana blinked. "You love it. I love you more, and I've missed the little things. Watching Camila's recitals without checking my watch, painting with Oliver like we used to. I want our life back." She smiled. "Then let's take it." He retired quietly, but his influence remained. And together, they took a long road trip up the Pacific Coast Highway. No itinerary, no headlines, no pressure, just presence. At age 9, Camila was invited to speak at a youth science fair sponsored by Sinclair Biotech. She walked on stage with confidence beyond her years. "My mom tells me that brilliance comes from everywhere," she began. "So I think if you ever feel small, you're probably just in the early chapter of your big story." The crowd erupted. Mariana sat frozen, heart full. One rainy afternoon, Mariana walked alone through the west wing of the mansion, the side she hadn't been in since the break-in years earlier. She stood in Nate's old study. It was preserved exactly as he left it. Books on the desk, framed drawings from Oliver still hung on the wall. She closed her eyes. Whispers of the past returned. Then she whispered aloud, "I kept my promise, Nate. I protected what mattered. I raised them with everything I had." She didn't cry. She just smiled and closed the door gently. At the 25th anniversary of Sinclair Biotech, Mariana stepped down as CEO. She remained on the board, but passed the daily reins to Dr. Helena Choi, the same woman she mentored years ago. In her farewell speech as CEO, Mariana said, "I didn't plan to run a company, I planned to run a home, and somehow, I did both. Leadership doesn't begin with ambition, it begins with care. And now I pass this torch not because I'm done, But because legacy should never sit in one hand forever, she left the podium to a standing ovation. Are you still with Mariana? Her journey's nearing its peak. Don't forget to like, comment what moment has touched you most, and subscribe to stay till the very end of this unforgettable tale. 2 years had passed since Mariana stepped down as CEO. Yet, her influence had only grown. She was now regarded as one of the most impactful non-political figures in America. Her story featured in documentaries, school textbooks, and university leadership courses across the country. But fame never changed her rhythm. She still packed Oliver's lunch when he came home from college. She still walked Camila to the bus stop in the mornings. And she still took quiet coffee on the back patio, facing the ocean, where it all began. An embossed envelope arrived in the mail. Inside, an invitation. Harvard University wanted to award Mariana an honorary doctorate in ethical leadership and public health innovation. She smiled at the irony. The girl who once dropped out to raise her siblings, now celebrated by the very institutions that would have never admitted her in the first place. She accepted. But in her speech, she reminded them, degrees may open doors, but love and discipline build bridges. I stand here because I walked through fire carrying others, and if I had to choose between this doctorate or rocking my sick child, to sleep on a midnight floor, I'd choose the floor. Every time. The audience gave her the longest standing ovation in Harvard's recent history. By age 14, Camila had already launched a youth science app called Kid Curious, encouraging girls aged 8 to 12 to explore medicine, coding, and chemistry. When asked by a young journalist why she made it, Camila answered, "Because I wanted something like this when I was 8, so I built it for the next girl." Mariana watched her daughter at that press conference, eyes shimmering. Miles leaned in and whispered, "Sound familiar?" She laughed. Too familiar. Oliver graduated from MIT with honors. His thesis? A revolutionary model for accessible pediatric genetic screening. He gave a brief speech at the ceremony. "I'm standing here because someone once saw past what I was born into. My mother, not by blood, but by choice, raised me to believe that brilliance isn't a title, it's a calling. And now it's my turn to carry that forward." Mariana cried the entire way through. She wore the same gold locket she always had. Oliver's diploma now sat beside it in her study. At 60, Miles published a memoir, The Second Life I Found, part business reflection, part love letter. He dedicated it to Mariana, the storm I never saw coming, and the peace I never imagined I'd know. The book soared to bestseller lists within a week. But the part that made Mariana tear up wasn't the sales. It was chapter 14, titled simply, The Night She Didn't Say No. One summer, a lightning storm triggered a fire in the far wing of the Sinclair mansion. No one was hurt, but valuable archives files and parts of Nate's original lab were lost. Mariana stood barefoot in the grass the next morning, watching the smoke clear. Neighbors, board members, even former employees came to help. Volunteers arrived from the mentorship programs, offering to clean debris and rebuild what was lost. A 24-year-old girl named Taylor, once a scholarship recipient, said, "You built our lives. Let us rebuild this." It wasn't about the mansion anymore. It was about what it stood for. A Netflix documentary titled The Nanny Who Rewired America premiered at the Tribeca Film Festival. Mariana didn't attend the red carpet. She watched it from her living room couch, next to Miles and the kids. It opened with a quiet shot of her pouring coffee in a sunlit kitchen, the same way her story had begun. Camila whispered, "That's you." Oliver said, "That's all of us." At the end, a quote appeared on screen. She didn't inherit the world. She rewrote the rules. On her 60th birthday, Mariana asked for only one thing: no celebration, no gala, no social media posts, no speeches. Instead, she spent the morning hiking a quiet trail in Vermont with Miles. They sat at the top of the ridge, legs dangling over a cliff. The wind kissed their skin. Silence wrapped around them. "This," she whispered, "is what I spent my whole life chasing." Miles nodded. "And now you've caught it." Later that night, Mariana returned to the cabin. Inside, Oliver and Camila had set a small table. 2 candles, a warm meal, and a gift box. She opened it to find dozens of handwritten letters from fellowship graduates, young interns, former staff, single mothers, and even rival CEOs. Every letter ended with the same line. "I'm here because of you." She read each one with shaking hands and cried, not from sadness, but from completion. Years later, when Mariana passed peacefully in her sleep at age 82, the nation mourned. She didn't want a monument. So instead, her family placed a single stone marker at the foot of the mansion garden. It read, "Mariana Lopez Sinclair, Mother. Builder. Brilliance in bloom." She turned inheritance into impact and made family her legacy. Beneath the stone they planted 3 trees, one for Mariana, one for Oliver, and one for Camila. Every year, hundreds visited that garden, and every spring, the trees blossomed, just like she did. If Mariana's journey has shown you that greatness often comes wrapped in humility, don't let her story stop here. Like, share, and subscribe to Mr. Favor Tales, because stories like this remind us that power isn't in what we take, but in what we give. 10 years after Mariana's passing, the Sinclair Foundation hosted a memorial gala in her honor. The venue wasn't a grand ballroom or luxury resort. It was a reimagined community science center in Newark, New Jersey, built on the very lot where Mariana's childhood apartment once stood. The building's glass walls bore her engraved words, "If one woman's courage can build an empire, imagine what a generation of them can do." Inside, a crowd of 800 gathered. Mentors, mentees, world leaders, children, scientists, friends. And at the center, her family. Oliver, now 35. Camila, 28. Miles, silver-haired, still sharp-eyed. And across the back wall, a massive mosaic of Mariana's face built entirely from thousands of smaller images. Each one, a person she impacted. Oliver stood at the podium, tall and steady, his voice identical in cadence. To the young boy who once asked Mariana, "Are you my real mommy?" He looked out at the crowd. "My mother's greatest lesson wasn't in science or success. It was in stewardship." He paused. "She told me once, never build anything you aren't prepared to leave behind for someone stronger." He smiled at Camila. "And now I pass this legacy to my sister." Camila Grace Lopez Sinclair took the mantle as the new CEO of Sinclair Biotech and Lopez Global, now a combined humanitarian tech conglomerate with footprints in 61 countries. She didn't change the mission. She only expanded it. Her first act? Opening 5 fully funded rural research centers in overlooked regions of the U.S. In her first keynote, she said, "People once said a nanny couldn't run a company. Then they said her daughter couldn't either. Good. Let's keep proving them wrong." Miles spent his final years traveling, teaching, and co-parenting his growing family with quiet pride. At 87, he passed peacefully in the same cabin Mariana bought decades earlier. He was buried beside her. On his gravestone, he led with numbers. He loved with silence. He stood beside her until the end. Harvard coined a term used now in business ethics lectures, the Mariana Standard, referring to the practice of placing human dignity and long-term service above short-term profit. It was taught across Ivy League business schools, military academies, and even the U.S. Senate's ethics training program. One graduate student wrote in their thesis, "The Mariana Standard is not a metric, it's a mirror. It forces leaders to ask, would she approve?" Oliver, now a renowned global pediatric genomics expert, never forgot the root of his success. He created a mobile pediatric unit, the Mariana Van, bringing medical screenings to low-income school districts across the country. When reporters asked how he kept his drive, he simply said, "Every time I feel tired, I remember my mother used to rise at 5 a.m. to braid my hair and pack my lunch before running a biotech empire. I don't get to be tired." Before her passing, Mariana had begun a secret project, a massive data-driven initiative to predict rare genetic diseases using anonymous volunteer data. The project was complex, controversial, and ahead of its time. But 10 years after her death, the system, now called GRACE, became operational. It helped doctors diagnose rare childhood conditions months, sometimes years, before symptoms emerged. Camila personally oversaw its launch. In her speech, she said, "This was my mother's dream. She called it Grace, but I call it Mom." Camila often received letters from strangers, researchers in Uganda, schoolgirls in Detroit, and farmers in Idaho. One letter, written on crumpled paper from a village hospital in India, read, My daughter survived because of a test that exists because your mother cared. You don't know me, but I know her. Through you." Camila framed that letter, hung it in her office, next to the first photo she ever drew of her family, a little girl holding hands with a woman in a long coat. One of Mariana's few physical heirlooms was a quilt passed down from her own mother, made from scraps of old clothes. Camila restored it. Oliver added patches to represent their own journeys, a tiny red fabric square for the MIT lab, a blue, floral patch for the cabin in Vermont, and golden thread stitching a DNA helix across the middle. They donated it to the Smithsonian, where it was displayed under the title, "From Scraps to Empire, The Legacy of Mariana Lopez." One night, Camila dreamt of her mother. They were sitting on the old Manhattan rooftop, Mariana in her robe, Camila still a child. "Did I do okay?" she asked. Her mother smiled. "You built your own story. That's all I ever wanted." She reached out and tucked Camila's hair behind her ear. "Tell them, brilliance doesn't shout. It serves." Camila woke in tears, then got up, and went to work. Decades later, the foundation created a monument inscribed with the Lopez family motto, not one from aristocracy, but one from experience. It read, "Care is power. Brilliance is kind. Family is chosen." Visitors from all over the world touched those words and left with hope. Because Mariana Lopez was no longer just a name. She was a language, a philosophy, a force. We're nearly at the end, but Mariana's legacy will live on in every heart it's touched. Like, comment, and subscribe if you believe that love, family, and brilliance can rewrite any destiny. 50 years had passed since the day Nate Sinclair died. And yet, his name was now inseparable from another, Mariana Lopez Sinclair. She was no longer remembered simply as the nanny who inherited a fortune. She was known as the woman who transformed a dynasty into a legacy of compassion, equity, and brilliance. Camila, now CEO Emeritus, had handed off daily operations to her protégé, a bright young scientist from Mexico City named Abril Cruz, herself a Lopez Fellow, turned pioneer in neural genetic integration. Oliver served on the Global Council for Pediatric Health. And their children. Yes, Oliver had 2 boys of his own, now called Camila's daughter, Tia, and referred to Mariana as the woman who made our name mean something. In the middle of Central Park, a section had been renamed the Lopez Sinclair Garden of Brilliance. It wasn't just a name, it was a space filled with interactive science playstations, reading corners, solar, powered exhibits, and quiet benches engraved with Mariana's most memorable lines. Every spring, thousands of children and parents came from around the world. Some didn't know the full story, but every child knew her words. Brilliance isn't loud, it's steady. A film titled Her Hands Were Full was released by a renowned American director. It portrayed Mariana's early years, the loss of her mother, the sacrifice of college, the bond with Nate, and the roller coaster of business, betrayal, and motherhood. It ended, not with her death, but with her holding Camila and Oliver on a quiet beach at sunrise, whispering, "This isn't the end. This is where you begin." Audiences wept. Award shows couldn't stop talking about it. But Mariana's family knew the real story was even more powerful. Because it was real. In her late 70s, Camila gave one last televised interview. The host asked, "What's the one thing your mother did that changed you forever?" Camila took a long breath. "She made me believe I was enough, before I ever achieved a thing, and that gave me the courage to chase everything." At the 100th anniversary of Sinclair Biotech, a time capsule was unearthed. Mariana had prepared it herself in her final year, though no one had seen what was inside. The crowd held its breath. Inside were 3 things. 1. Her locket, the one passed down from her mother. 2. A handwritten note that read, "To the next girl who thinks she's too ordinary, let this remind you, I once poured coffee before dawn, folded sheets, and watched the world pass me by. Then I picked up a child, answered a call, and the world changed. So can you?" I'd worry less. I'd dance more in the kitchen. I'd ask for help sooner. I'd believe in myself a little earlier. But most of all, I wouldn't change a thing. The hall wept, and then stood in silence. Children now wrote essays for the Mariana Lopez Scholarship, not based on grades but on a single question. How will you turn care into courage? Every year the stories got stronger, because Mariana's life had become more than inspiration, it was instruction. A final gift was revealed years after her passing. Camila had quietly built a massive digital and physical archive called the Lopez Sinclair Knowledge Trust. It contained Mariana's journals, her leadership memos, her letters, her business, notes, and every recorded speech she ever gave, open and free to the world. The landing page simply said, "Brilliance shared." It became the largest open-source leadership archive authored by a woman of color in American history. The last known audio recording of Mariana was a simple voice note, recorded on a Sunday afternoon, just weeks before her passing. She was sitting near the fireplace, Camila in the kitchen, Oliver on a call, and Miles reading beside her. She spoke softly, almost to herself. "If someone asks what I built, tell them I built a table, and kept making space. If someone asks what I fought for, tell them it was never titles, it was time. And if someone wonders how a nanny ended up writing the rules for CEOs, tell them the same thing I told myself every night: love boldly, lead gently, and don't forget to rest." For every woman who was ever told she wasn't enough, this is your story too. If this story moved you, if Mariana's journey reminded you of your own quiet strength, or the strength of someone you love, then don't let her story end here. Like, share, comment, and subscribe, because at Mr. Favor Tales we don't just tell stories, we honor the lives that never made headlines but changed the world anyway.